I didn't want to serve my country in that form, that fashion.
In 2013, Richard Dean Anderson walked away from nearly $30 million in Hollywood deals, and no one understood why.
If we were asked to do another episode or a movie, would you do it?
Oh, it would depend on so many things, but I don't want the work.
He was 63, still in demand, and studios were fighting to pull him back.
There were some risks at being so blindly energetic and willing to do all your own stunts.
But behind the silence was a truth he never shared. Those close to him say something happened during his MacGyver years. Something so disturbing he's avoided it for decades. The hockey prodigy who lost everything. In 2016, CBS was rebooting MacGyver, and the producers contacted Richard Dean Anderson with an offer. They wanted the original MacGyver involved in any capacity possible: executive producer, consultant, whatever he'd accept. Richard refused. They asked for a single cameo appearance. His answer remained no. For every season of the reboot, fans waited for Richard's cameo and producers kept trying. He never changed his answer, not once. Most people assumed it was about money or retirement. It wasn't. Richard had his reasons, and they ran deeper to hunt anyone outside his inner circle knew. Understanding why he could walk away from millions of dollars and a legacy role meant going back to the beginning, back to where it all started. Dawson Creek, British Columbia, January 23, 1950. Richard's mother went into labor during a blizzard with the temperature 17 below zero. 3 days later, Stuart Anderson packed his wife and newborn son into their Ford sedan and drove south across the border. They settled in Roseville, Minnesota, a working-class suburb where hockey wasn't just a sport. It was religion. Stuart taught English at the local high school for $3,200 a year. At night, he played stand-up bass in jazz clubs around Minneapolis. Jocelyn painted portraits in the garage. Richard was the oldest of 4 boys, and money was always tight. But Richard had something that mattered more than money in Minnesota. He belonged on a hockey rink. By age 12, he was playing with 16-year-olds. By 14, scouts from the Minnesota North Stars were showing up at his games. Stan Mikita, the Chicago Blackhawks legend, watched Richard play in 1966. Mikita pulled Stuart Anderson aside after the game and told him their son had real NHL potential. Richard lived at the ice rink. 5 a.m. practices before school, 3 hours after school. He taped his stick the same way every time. White tape, overlapping exactly half an inch. On January 15, 1966, during a Saturday game against Edina High School, a defenseman threw a hip check that sent Richard spinning into the boards. His right arm struck first, the crack echoing loud enough for nearby spectators to hear. The clean break of the radius would keep him in a cast for 6 weeks. 3 weeks later, on February 5th, Richard was doing shooting drills with his left hand. He lost his balance reaching for a loose puck and fell backward, putting his left arm out to break the fall. This time, the crack was different. Wet-sounding. The ulna shattered into 4 pieces. One fragment punctured the skin and blood spread across the ice in a pattern that looked like a maple leaf. The surgery lasted 4 hours. 3 pins, 2 metal plates, 12 screws. The orthopedic surgeon told Stuart and Jocelyn that Richard would probably regain 70% mobility, but hockey was finished. Richard spent 93 days in Minneapolis General Hospital. The depression was crushing. His weight dropped from 165 to 141 pounds. The North Stars scout came once, stood in the doorway for 30 seconds, and never came back. The kid who tried to bike 100 miles. Richard Anderson was 10 years old when he stole $20 from his mother's purse and tried to bike to Duluth. He left at 4 in the morning, pedaling north on Highway 61. His bike was a Schwinn Typhoon, red with rust spots, bought used for $15. The Duluth plan was simple: 156 miles with 4 peanut butter sandwiches and a thermos of water. By noon, he was past Forest Lake with his legs already cramping. Near Wyoming, Minnesota, his chain came off. At mile 52, just outside Pine City, his body quit. Both legs seized with cramps so severe that he fell off the bike onto the gravel shoulder. A state trooper found and rescued him. 7 years later, Richard tried again. This time Alaska, 5,640 miles. He left June 15, 1961, with $47 and a sleeping bag. On day 12 in Saskatchewan, he ran out of money and ate grass to stop the hunger. Day 18, a thunderstorm in Alberta left him hypothermic. He pedaled the Alaska Highway for 9 straight days, 1,422 miles of gravel, averaging 15 flats per day. Between these bike adventures, Richard was building his tolerance for danger. He bought his first motorcycle at 15, a Honda CB77 purchased for $75 from a guy who'd crashed it twice. Richard would hit 90 on County Road B after midnight. Winter of 1966, Richard built an igloo and decided to live in it. A real igloo following instructions from a library book. On the third night, his father found him unconscious, body temperature at 94 degrees. 5 more degrees and his heart would have stopped. From whale trainer to soap opera star. Richard Dean Anderson arrived in Los Angeles on February 3, 1976. With 2 suitcases and $147 in cash. He had dropped out of Ohio University 2 credits short of graduation. His advisor called him an idiot. His parents worried he was throwing his life away. Richard rented a studio apartment in North Hollywood for $135 a month and started making rounds to casting calls listed in Variety. The first job he landed wasn't acting. Marineland of the Pacific needed someone to work with their killer whales. $25 a day to stand in a wetsuit and feed fish to Orky and Corky, 2 orcas who weighed 8,000 pounds each. Richard learned to read their moods, to anticipate when Orky might decide to drag him underwater for fun. The job taught him something crucial about performing. Stay calm when everything could go wrong in seconds. He drove to New York 3 times in 1976, sleeping in his car to save money, auditioning for off-Broadway productions, the Neighborhood Playhouse, the Actors Studio, small theaters in the East Village where audiences numbered 12 on good nights. He played a drug dealer, a Vietnam veteran, a disturbed teenager. Each role paid nothing but taught him how to inhabit someone else's skin completely. ABC was expanding General Hospital from 30 to 45 minutes. They needed new characters to fill the time. Richard auditioned for Dr. Jeff Weber on March 19, 1976. The casting director later said Richard looked exhausted, unshaven, wearing the same shirt he'd worn to feed whales that morning. But when he read the lines, something electric happened. He wasn't performing. He was just being. He got the part. First episode aired April 1, 1976. The contract paid $320 per episode, 5 episodes a week. Richard appeared in 611 episodes over 5 years. By 1979, General Hospital had become the #1 daytime drama in America, pulling 14 million viewers daily. Luke and Laura's wedding hadn't happened yet, but the groundwork was being laid. Richard acted opposite Denise Alexander, who played his on-screen wife. Stuart Damon became a mentor, teaching him how to memorize 40 pages of dialogue overnight. Success in daytime television rarely translated to prime time. Casting directors saw soap actors as pretty faces who couldn't handle real drama. Richard fought against that stereotype. In 1982, CBS gave him the lead in 7 Brides for 7 Brothers, a musical series about frontier ranchers. He played Adam McFadden, the eldest brother. The show had everything: strong cast, decent budget, Friday night slot. It died after 22 episodes. CBS tried again immediately. Emerald Point NAS, a military drama set at a naval air station. Richard played Lieutenant Simon Adams, a hotshot pilot with a troubled past. Dennis Weaver had top billing. The production values were high. Reviews were positive. Canceled after 22 episodes. 2 strikes in 1 year. Most actors never recover from that kind of failure. The glasses that changed television history. Richard Dean Anderson walked into the MacGyver audition wearing his prescription glasses, thick black frames that made him look more like a substitute teacher than an action hero. Producer Henry Winkler had already seen 60 actors by that point, searching desperately for someone to play Angus MacGyver, a secret agent who refused to carry guns. Chuck Norris had passed on the project, Timothy Dalton was too expensive, and ABC was pressuring him to cast someone before they lost faith in the entire concept. Anderson didn't remove the glasses for his reading, and when he stumbled over a technical term about thermodynamics instead of starting over, he laughed and said, "Well, MacGyver would know this stuff. I just pretend." Winkler scribbled in his notes, "Honest, real, not trying to be cool." That honesty continued when the conversation turned to firearms. Anderson hated guns in real life because his grandfather had accidentally shot himself while cleaning a rifle in 1962, when Anderson was just 12 years old. When Winkler asked if he was comfortable with them, Anderson said no without hesitation. Winkler smiled, realizing it was perfect. MacGyver hates them too. The pilot filmed in November 1985, and Anderson insisted on doing his own stunts despite having zero training. The first day he had to slide down a sand dune in the desert, tearing his pants and scraping his legs raw. But he kept filming anyway. By the third episode, he was doing 95% of the action himself. In the famous scene where MacGyver builds a bomb from cleaning supplies, Anderson mixed the actual chemicals and nearly burned his eyebrows off in the process. The National Rifle Association noticed immediately that here was a primetime action hero who wouldn't touch guns. They organized boycotts and pressured sponsors until General Motors pulled 3 commercials. Anderson's response made headlines, "I'm proud to be on the NRA's hit list." Parents loved it because finally there was a show where the hero used intelligence instead of violence. Teachers wrote letters saying kids were suddenly interested in chemistry. The word MacGyver entered the Oxford English Dictionary in 1991 as a verb meaning to repair or build something using improvised materials. MacGyver ran 139 episodes from 1985 to 1992 and changed television's definition of an action hero. There was no more mindless shooting, no more invincible warriors. It also brought serious money. Richard's salary jumped to $1 million per season, but the real wealth came when he negotiated executive producer credit, meaning every time an episode aired anywhere in the world, Richard got paid. By 1990, he was earning more from reruns in Germany than from making new episodes. The success came with a price tag nobody discussed publicly. 15-hour shooting days, 6-day weeks, 9 months a year. Richard's body was breaking down, but MacGyver had become bigger than just a TV show. It was a phenomenon. Action figures sold out at Christmas. The Swiss Army Knife Company credited MacGyver with doubling their sales. Universities reported increased enrollment in engineering programs. Richard had accidentally created a cultural revolution that celebrated brains over brawn. Walking away wasn't an option. Not yet. The hidden hole that nearly destroyed him. Richard Dean Anderson was running full speed across a field in British Columbia when his right foot found a hole that shouldn't have existed. October 14, 1987, episode 12 of MacGyver's third season. His foot went into the depression, his body kept moving forward, and something in his lower back detonated like a grenade. The disc between his L4 and L5 vertebrae didn't just herniate, it exploded. Fragments of cartilage shot into his spinal canal like shrapnel. The sciatic nerve got crushed between the bone and the swollen tissue. Richard said it felt like someone was running electricity through his skeleton while hammering railroad spikes into his hip. The on-set medic gave him Tylenol. Richard drove himself back to his Vancouver apartment, climbed 3 flights of stairs on his hands and knees, and spent the night on his bathroom floor because the cold tile was the only thing that helped. The next morning, he was back on set. The show had to continue. For 18 months, he worked through agony that would have hospitalized most people. Wake up at 4:30 a.m., 4 Vicodin with coffee, 2 more pills at 10 a.m., 3 at lunch, 4 before the afternoon stunts. At night, muscle relaxants and sleeping pills just to get 3 hours of unconsciousness. The prescription bottles multiplied in his trailer. The makeup department started filming him from specific angles because his face showed the pain. Left side only, never straight on. His stunt coordinator noticed Richard couldn't lift his right leg properly anymore. They rewrote action scenes to require less running. The writers gave MacGyver back problems in the show to explain why he moved differently. On March 19, 1991, they were filming episode 18 of season 6 when Richard's body finally quit. He was supposed to climb a ladder for a simple scene, but his legs wouldn't work. He collapsed on set, fully conscious but unable to stand. The ambulance took him to Vancouver General Hospital, where doctors discovered his kidneys were shutting down from the painkillers. Richard spent 2 weeks in the hospital. The neurologist showed him the MRI. His spine looked like a war zone, multiple herniated discs, bone spurs, scar tissue wrapped around nerves. The doctor said most people with this level of damage would be in a wheelchair. Richard asked when he could return to work. The doctor said never, if you want to walk at age 50. The depression that followed was darker than losing hockey. Richard later admitted he kept a loaded revolver in his nightstand during this period. Not because he was planning anything specific, just because the pain was so constant that he wanted an exit available. 3 in the morning, unable to sleep, he would hold the gun and think about how easy it would be. Henry Winkler visited him at home and said they could continue the show without him. Richard said no. Kill the character or cancel the show. After 7 years and 139 episodes, MacGyver ended. The final episode aired May 21, 1992. Richard was 30 pounds lighter than when the show started. He looked 10 years older. Vancouver Hideaway and the Stargate Revolution. MGM called Richard in January 1997 about a new science fiction series based on the Stargate movie. They wanted him to play Jack O'Neill, the Air Force colonel who leads missions through a portal to other planets. Richard had one condition: 3-day work weeks. The producers laughed. Richard said, "Fine, good luck with your show," and hung up. They called back 2 days later. The producers convinced MGM to accept Richard's terms because his name alone could draw millions of viewers. Monday through Wednesday only. 8 months in Vancouver, 4 months off completely. $100,000 per episode while only working part-time. MGM caved. Stargate SG-1 premiered July 27, 1997. Critics predicted failure. By Season 3, SG-1 was beating Star Trek in the ratings. By Season 5, it had become the longest-running American science fiction series in history. 214 episodes over 10 seasons. Richard appeared in 173 of them. That 3-day contract became legendary in Hollywood. Other actors started demanding the same thing, but no one else got away with it. By 2001, Richard's pay had doubled to $200,000 per episode, totaling $4.4 million per season while still only working 3 days a week. Stargate SG-1 became sci-fi's crown jewel, pulling in 2.5 million viewers weekly and bringing in over $100 million in international syndication deals. Fan conventions paid Richard and Amanda Tapping up to $50,000 just to appear together. The fans loved him because so many of O'Neill's sarcastic one-liners were things Richard just made up on set. Over 10 seasons, he earned more than $30 million, not counting reruns and residuals. But he wasn't killing himself for it. 3 days a week, home by 6 p.m. He had learned that survival mattered more than success. Then, in 2004, everything changed. While filming Season 8, Richard injured his knee during a simple running scene. His foot landed wrong, his knee twisted, and the ligaments tore. He needed surgery and months of rehab. The doctors told him straight, keep doing physical scenes and he could lose his ability to walk properly. The producers promoted Colonel O'Neill to Brigadier General, meaning he'd mostly stay behind a desk. His action scenes were cut by more than half. The fans noticed but didn't know why. The truth didn't come out until years later. Treatment cost over $200,000, though insurance covered most of it. Even now, Richard walks with a slight limp. He never took another physically demanding role again. The romance that became a media nightmare. Celia Ward played Richard's sister on Emerald Point NAS in 1983. Their chemistry was so obvious that the director had to keep reminding them they were supposed to be siblings. After filming ended, Richard asked her to dinner. For 3 years they lived like a married couple who happened to have separate leases in the same West Hollywood building. The relationship couldn't survive MacGyver. 15-hour days meant Richard left at 5 a.m. and returned after 9 p.m. Celia later said she felt like she was dating a ghost. They ended it in 1986 but stayed friends. Terry Hatcher came next, April 1991 to February 1993. She was playing Penny Parker on MacGyver. Off-screen, she was trying to rescue Richard from his work addiction. She convinced him to try therapy. He went twice and quit. 22 months of trying to make Richard choose life over work. She finally gave up. The Katharina Witt romance lasted exactly 6 weeks in spring 1992. She was the East German figure skater who had won 4 world championships. The media went insane. Olympic champion dates MacGyver. Photographers followed them everywhere. German tabloids paid 5 figures for pictures of them holding hands. The attention destroyed any chance they had. The relationship with Lara Flynn Boyle changed everything. In 1995, she was 25 and fresh off Twin Peaks, while Richard was 45. The 20-year age difference became the only thing anyone talked about, with paparazzi camping outside his house while tabloids invented stories about marriage proposals, pregnancy scares, and jealous rages. The relationship lasted 4 months, but the damage lasted years. Richard stopped dating publicly and moved to Vancouver, where he became invisible. The birth that changed everything. April Prose was fixing another actor's costume when Richard met her in October 1996. She worked as a wardrobe stylist on independent films. They talked for 4 hours about everything except Hollywood. She called her mother at midnight from her car and said, "I just met the man I'm going to spend my life with." Her mother asked if he was an actor. April said yes, unfortunately. Her mother told her to run, but April didn't run. Their first real date lasted 14 hours. Richard was 46 and April was 32. April got pregnant in December 1997. Richard was filming Stargate when she called with the news. He sat in his trailer for an hour, unable to move. 47 years old and about to become a father for the first time, his stunt double found him crying. Not sad tears, terrified tears. On August 2, 1998, at Cedars-Sinai Hospital, April had been in labor for 19 hours when Wiley Quinn Anna Rose Anderson arrived. She didn't cry or breathe, and the room went from excitement to panic in seconds. Doctors pushed Richard aside while someone kept saying no respiratory effort, working frantically on the tiny purple body. 3 minutes passed before Wiley took her first breath. Richard stood against the wall watching medical professionals fight to save his daughter's life. Then finally came a cough, a gasp, a cry. Richard's legs gave out and he sat on the hospital floor and sobbed. The first year broke something in Richard. He cried every single day, not from sadness but from being overwhelmed. He would watch Wiley sleep and tears would just start flowing. He read parenting books and joined Mommy and Me yoga classes where he was the only father. He called the pediatrician at 3 a.m. about hiccups. April found him once at 4 a.m. holding Wiley and reciting MacGyver scripts to her because he didn't know any lullabies. Single dad at 53. Choosing diapers over dollars. Richard Dean Anderson became a single father on a Tuesday afternoon in September 2003 when April Prose packed her bags and moved out of their Malibu home. No lawyers, no custody battle. April simply said she couldn't do it anymore, and Richard said he understood. Wiley was 5 years old. From that day forward, Richard did everything alone. School drop-offs at 7:45 a.m., swim lessons, parent-teacher conferences. He turned down 3 movie offers that year. Combined value, $4.2 million. His agent begged him to hire nannies. Richard refused. He learned to braid hair from YouTube videos, made packed lunches every night, checked homework, read Harry Potter books out loud until his voice went hoarse. Even at 68 years old, he was still driving Wiley to high school every morning, waiting in the carpool line with the other parents who had no idea MacGyver was behind the wheel of the Honda Accord. On February 5, 2006, during the second quarter of Super Bowl XL, a MasterCard commercial aired. There was MacGyver, 14 years after the show ended, escaping from a warehouse using a tube sock, a paperclip, and a stick of gum. 20 seconds of screen time earned Richard $1 million. He donated half to Wiley's college fund. The commercial directors wanted him for 3 days. Richard gave them 4 hours. On April 9, 2006, The Simpsons episode Kiss Kiss Bang Bangalore aired. Richard voiced himself getting kidnapped by Patty and Selma after admitting he only played MacGyver for money. The recording session took 2 hours. Matt Groening asked him to stay longer and record material for future episodes. Richard said no. He had to pick up Wiley from soccer practice. The day he quit Hollywood forever. Richard made the decision while sitting in a hospital waiting room on March 15, 2013. Wiley was getting her appendix removed, a routine surgery, nothing serious. But Richard sat there for 6 hours thinking about all the school plays he'd missed, the soccer games he'd watched on video instead of in person, the bedtime stories he hadn't read because he was on location. She was 15, with only 3 more years until college. He called his agent from the hospital parking lot and told him he was done. He bought a farm in Malibu that covered 12 acres, complete with avocado trees, horse stables, and a view of the Pacific that real estate agents called priceless. Richard spent his days fixing fences, feeding chickens, and teaching Wiley to drive his old pickup truck on the dirt roads. Hollywood kept calling, but he stopped answering. Scripts arrived by courier and he used them as kindling for the fireplace. The Sea Shepherd Conservation Society asked him to join their board in 2014. Richard said yes, but only for behind-the-scenes work with no publicity campaigns or celebrity fundraisers. He wrote checks, attended board meetings via Zoom, and helped plan strategies to stop illegal whaling. Paul Watson, the founder, later said Richard was the only celebrity board member who actually read the financial reports. 3 fan conventions per year became his limit. 1 in Vancouver, 1 in London, and 1 rotating location. 2 hours of autographs, 1 hour-long panel. $500 per signature went directly to environmental charities, and fans waited 7 hours to spend 30 seconds with him. Richard knew their names and remembered their stories from previous years. But when the convention ended, he disappeared. No after parties, no special dinners. Back to Malibu. Back to real life. When CBS rebooted MacGyver, they offered him a position and wanted him involved in any capacity, even just a cameo appearance. Richard rejected it outright. He had made it clear he was retired and all he wanted was to spend time with his family. Don't miss the videos on screen now, they're just as interesting. Catch you in the next one.